is your definition of a bad story? You know what I'm talking about. The kind of story that ruins a perfectly fine conversation you're having with your friend or maybe even a family member. Hold on, let me guess. A bad story is when the other person talks about themselves too much. It's all about me, me, me. Bias is real. 100% real. Or, how about this? The story is unclear. Malabo. You don't understand where or when things are happening, and as such, you're not able to appreciate the sequence of events. This is why point of view and setting matter. Every story relies on these two elements. If all of us understood these concepts, which of course are lifted from the literary genre known as fiction, we could tell better stories to one another. I know. When you hear point of view and setting, you think of a bunch of bullet points that you need to memorize from an English textbook. But then again, there's a reason why they're written in those textbooks. This is the perspective through which the story is told. This point of view is often the mindset of a certain character. And like I mentioned in my previous video, every character has their own personality, and thus their own unique way of seeing the world. This means that the story could be told differently as you go from one perspective to the other. Take for example the short story Dahong Palay by Arturo Rotor. If you read this story from beginning to end, you'll see that Dahong Palay closely follows a young, physically weak farmer named Sebio. It's almost like there's a narrator who's standing beside Sebio at all times and letting the reader know every event that Sebio is involved in. This is called the third person point of view. As in, there's a third person, a narrator, who acts as the bridge between the character in the story and the reader of the story. In the third person point of view, the narrator refers to the main character as he or she, his or her. Though the narrator can see the events of the story as they happen, this narrator does have an in-depth knowledge of, and perhaps even a slight bias towards, the main character. Now imagine if Dahong Palay were to be told from the perspective of some other character. What if the story followed, let's say, the character named Mercy, who happens to be the girl that Sebio likes? Or what if the main character would be Pasio, who is a bully in the eyes of Sebio? Maybe, just maybe, the events of the story will take on a different meaning if the narrator follows the actions and decisions of Mercy, or Pasio for that matter. Here's another type of perspective. What if Sebio himself were the narrator? In that case, we would have an even more intimate understanding of his inner thoughts, emotions, and reactions. In that case, the story would be told using the pronouns I, me, and mine. This is called first person point of view. Let's make things even more interesting. Can a story follow multiple characters? Sure, that would be called the omniscient point of view. By giving us insights into the thoughts and actions of 2 characters, 3 characters, maybe even more, a story in the omniscient POV helps us understand the bigger picture. This type of story allows us to compare and contrast the insights and the emotional state of multiple characters involved in the plot. Here's something else that could affect the story that you're reading. Setting. This refers to 3 things: place, time, and culture. Let's look at each of these. Place refers to the locations in which the story happens. These locations may be filled with objects and supporting characters that help the protagonist achieve their goal in the story. But these locations might also contain dangers that could harm the characters. Time, or to be specific, the timeline of events, can build up suspense in the story. The limited minutes hours, days, or weeks could provide a natural obstacle for the characters to overcome. In addition, the passage of time could lead to the transformation of characters, making their eventual confrontation all the more exciting. Culture refers to the social, economic, and political background that the characters interact with. Sometimes, characters can be in direct conflict with the culture around them. Their point of view could be different from the cultural values and practices that are dominant in the story. In other words, setting, which again means place, time, and culture, can influence characters and their point of view. Going back to our example, the short story Dahong Palay takes place in a farming village, where there are plenty of trees and rice fields. The culture of this village places an emphasis on physical strength, since there is plenty of manual labor to be done in this place. This countryside location also contains a major threat to the characters, the Dahong Palay, a species of snake that contains deadly venom. Towards the conclusion of the story, Sebio saves Mercy from an attack from a Dahong Palay, but in the process, he gets bitten by the snake. Time is not on his side. He has just minutes to live. As the story reaches its dramatic end, Sebio grabs a horseshoe and straightens it into a vertical bar like it was simply a hair clip. He then plunges one end of the metal into a fire and, in front of several villagers that had once made fun of his frail body, drives the hot metal into the spot where he was bitten in order to draw out the poison from his wound. In a quick sequence of events, Sebio performs an act of impressive physical and mental strength. He loses consciousness soon after, but the last thing he sees in his point of view is the collective reaction of his fellow villagers. They'll never, ever call him weak again. That, dear learners, is how a story becomes fascinating through the power of setting point of view. That wraps up our second video on the elements of fiction. To see the first video on the element of character, click the link in the description. Got requests for any English lesson you'd like me to cover? Share it in the comments section and I'll get to work on it. Till next time!